Good morning. It is November 3rd and it's pretty early. It's 3:05 a.m. So why are we up so early? Well, daylight savings time, that kind of shifts the time that sun rises an hour earlier, so we gotta get up earlier. But also we got a heck of a hike ahead of us. Going to some public. It's about it takes a little over an hour to get to the spot, and the public we're going to is a thicket, mostly mountain laurel, some other little like saplings on this knob, or the end of this point, basically about a half mile from the tree is some crop fields. So hopes are that those deer are in those crop fields, and the buck kind of latch from some doe or whatever, and we'll catch them coming back through. They also know I've seen them lay down, but I also know bed in the little thicket we're near. But bucks will check that thicket for hot doe. They also cross those doe trails, kind of cut across all those doe trails coming through there, scent checking for doe. So it's kind of a really good cruising spot. Next time you see me will be a few miles from the vehicle, probably a little tired and sweaty, but up a tree and awaiting daylight. And on November 3rd, that's pretty awesome stuff right there. Just cracking light. I just had a shooter get down the hill for me. But I don't know if he winded me or not. It was a good buck. But a good 8-point. I hope I see him again. Man. He passed by me like 35 yards, but he was moving quick, and I could barely see him. It was still dark. So that possible shooter I saw earlier, he went through a thicket about 80 yards below me here. It's pretty windy today. I mean, it's like a 15, 16 mile per hour wind. So that thicket down there, maybe were deer like holding up to bed in this wind, especially yesterday in that high wind. I was thinking that I caught a doe moving around down in there just about 5 minutes ago. If that was a shooter I saw, it was still pretty dark to tell, but if it was, he might still be down in that area. Part of me wants to shift down there, but if they're laying in there, they're going to see me before I even get close. The nice thing is where that thicket's at, if they get to running around or chasing, there's a real good chance they'll come up this way. Just walked by it, 27 yards. So I arranged that trail because if a buck cuts that trail and walks it, I'll know where he is. She came basically right up the corner of the ridge, so right up the spine of the ridge, and then broke high just right at me here. So that was perfect. Man, I just want a nice shooter buck to come through here close like that. Awesome. We'll see what happens. Too bad that's not a seed here. Rack's about the right size. kind of had a little spike rubbing over there, probably 50 yards from me, just above that thicket. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift maybe 20 yards toward that thicket, just in case if something runs this edge of it, it might be within bow range. I gotta make sure I can still shoot some of the other areas that I want to shoot, so I'm gonna kind of just half pack my stand up and walk over here 20 yards or so and give it a peek. And if it looks good, I'll relocate. If it doesn't look good, I'll come right back to this tree. I relocated. Tried to go about 20 yards, but trees are too big there, so I had to go about 35 yards. But I got a tree I get in. This tree is a crooked little oak tree. About 11:15, but that's close at lunchtime for me. Ate my peanut butter and honey sandwich at like 8:30. Cheese. The wind does seem like it's starting to lay. I mean, it gusts every once in a while, but they're getting further apart and less intense. So, I mean, I did make that stand shift, so I potentially bumped some deer, but I don't think I did. I've been laying low. I'd love to get one in midday. That'd be really cool. Nice midday buck come through. Meh. He dropped the shot, and it like hit where I was aiming, but it was angled up. I don't know, man. Go down and away. I don't know. That's a nice one. That's a nice look. Damn it. I don't know if that's a fatal hit or not. It was probably just above halfway up the body. Oh, man. I'm a mess right now. I'm a mess. I'm a mess. I don't know what to do. I don't know what, like, he didn't drop. That buck came in me to scrape right there at 40 yards. He's stuck in that tree right there. Trees. 34.5 yards. I shot him for 35. He's moving off slow. I gotta give him time. I don't know. Man, that was a stud buck. Oh no. I better find that deer. Oh, he was a stud. Did you see that buck? Did you see it? That's a huge buck. It's a nice buck. But I think what I need to do is I need to pack up. I'm going to pack my stand up. It's like a 2-mile hike into here. I'm going to pack up, get everything out of here, go back to my truck, get some lighter clothes on, and then come back here. Try to be back here in about 3 hours or so, maybe 4. We'll see from there. I don't want to push this deer. I don't want to push him. So we're going to pace it a little bit. Okay, so I talked to Mitch, and I talked to my buddy Jared and his dad Dwayne. He has a lot of tracking experience, and we decided to do is last night, instead of going back in there after that deer, we just gave it all night. I'm going to hit the deer about 1:30ish, 1:30ish. So what we opted to do is basically, the thoughts are that if it was a fatal hit, if it was dead last night, it's dead today, and if it was marginal, then we gave it, it's, several hours. We went in this morning at like, or hit first light, and started looking, so that's like 7 o'clock or so. But we recovered the arrow. You can see there's a little bit of blood. It's just on the one side, and then there's some blood. It's hard to see right here. There's some blood on the arrow, but it's not much. It's definitely not coated. We found the arrow about 30-40 yards past where I last seen him, and we did find some blood. We found a tuft of hair where I hit, some brown hair. But we reviewed the footage last night. I sent the video to several friends, and it got kind of, the optimism definitely wasn't there after watching the video.
It looks like the hit was only about 2 inches below the back, and definitely above all the vitals, above the spine, most likely just kind of clipped the top. But we just wanted to give it a chance and give it a look today. And like I said, we recovered the arrow. The arrow kind of also, verifies what we saw in the footage. It's not coated in red blood or anything, but the blood we found was just quarter-sized drips for like about 100, 150 yards, and it petered out to nothing. We went ahead and checked blowdowns out, further and beyond where we last seen the blood, and we just couldn't find anything that indicated that he laid down. The other thoughts are if it was fatal, he would have went, and tucked into one of those blowdowns or something like that. We also checked a small stream by there, but no luck. So, freaking bummed out, man. That was a heck of a deer. Would have been one of my better public land or better PA deers at all, but to get an opportunity to get on public was pretty cool. But in retrospect, when I bleeded that deer and he stopped, I should have probably just aimed a little low. I kind of learned that lesson the hard way a couple other times, but I guess I got to learn it a few more. What do you think, Mitch? Call it a day? Call it?
Yeah, I don't think it was a fatal hit.
Well, good afternoon. I'm pretty blown out. It's been one of those days. Let me tell you about today. So, this morning, I felt pretty good about moving into that new area. Kind of hoping to catch some of the activity I seen the other day. Maybe. I didn't see anything. I got skunked. So, I figured, well, I'll make a shift around 10:30, 11 o'clock, and be settled into the new spot by noon, and then ride out the rest of the day in the new spot. Seems pretty legit, right? Well, while I'm making the trek from the first spot to the second, I stepped on a rock that was loose, and I slipped, and my bow came down, and the sight broke off the bow. I looked over, and the sight was laying beside my bow, like 2 foot away from it. So that sucks, right? I mean, that's not something you want to have happen ever, especially in early November. Fortunately, I take pictures of my sights, where they're at, as far as like the marks on them. I take a picture with my phone, my sights, my rest, all that stuff. So if something like that happens, I can get things back in line pretty easily. But I still had to run to the archery shop to get parts. Basically, I bought a brand new sight, scout parts off that, and used them to fix the old sight. So that took about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get the archery shop back, put things back together, and shoot to be sure I was on. Felt pretty good. It was about 1:30, 2 o'clock. So I was like, I'll go to this new spot that I was going to go to earlier. Well, I started coming to the new spot, and it's a hike to get in here. It's pretty far. And I feel pretty good. I got in clean. And as I'm approaching the tree, I'm eyeing this tree up ahead, 40 yards ahead of me. And I'm eyeing it up. That's the tree I want to use, right? Just before I get to it, I hear something coming. I'm thinking, ooh, maybe it's a deer. I see a tree even shaking. I'm thinking, oh, it's a buck rubbing, right? Well, guess what steps out? 2 older gentlemen. These guys had lost the trail that they were hiking on and wandered 3/4 of a mile off course, only to go right to me. But only just before they did that, they went through the bedding area, one of the bedding areas I was hoping to be hunting along. And they told me they jumped some deer, so, that always feels good. But, they can't help it, and, things happen, so I showed them my map where they were at. They had a map, a paper copy of a map of the area. They were they were in the wrong drainage system. They were at the wrong creek. So they were lost, and I helped get them back on course. And they walked off. So I was like, let's get set up. Well, because of all the commotion of running into those 2 older fellas, I decided to shift about 70, 80 yards further up the point, just because I figured if they did bump deer out of that area they walked through, they'd maybe shift it out further and we'll come up over the ridge a little further out. So I got this location. It looks really good. Get set up. Feel really good about those rubs.
and they realize that my rangefinder is not with me. So a lot of ups and downs today, for sure. Mostly downs. I actually really use a big uplift, which a nice big buck. That would do it. But, you know, we'll do our best we can tonight. It's a new spot, so it's just as much an observation as a hunt. Maybe learn a little about this new section of this ridge, and build some history that we could use to maybe, if not get it done tonight, get it done some other day. Last night in this new spot. I ended up seeing 4 doe last night, so it wasn't a bad evening, and I'm hoping to come back through following this doe, take them to the same area, use the same trail network. So I set up about 10 yards closer to that deer movement, which will put those deer at about 30 yards, and we'll see what happens here this morning. There's some rubs in the area, and we'll see how this goes. Meh. He just crashed. Yes. Yes. I got a buck. He's busted up, but he's a mature deer. And I wasn't going to pass him. Dude, that was a mature buck. I'm pretty sure it was at least a good buck. Like, he had some good mass. He was busted off in that main beam, but that's like the age class deer I want to get right there. That shot was right here. So close. There's blood all over the ground right there. Yes, yes. I got a buck. In the blood, looking good. Oh yeah. Dude, look at that buck. There he is. He's a really pretty buck. It's a shame he was a fighter apparently. It's actually a fresh break. Should maybe look around something in the shed season or whatever for the other half. It'd be cool to put it back together. But what a pretty deer. Nice big old PA buck. Look at the head on this thing. Like, look at that. It's a beautiful deer. All right. Well, here he is. This is my 2020 Pennsylvania buck. I'm in kind of a big woods setting today, and it paid off. What we ended up doing was yesterday we sat a spot that's actually did pretty well for us this year so far. I was seeing deer. I passed up that one buck on video in that spot like a week or two ago. But anyway, I sat that yesterday morning. I didn't see anything. I decided to relocate down the ridge about, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile. And when I was walking to the area, I had some issues yesterday. I broke the sight off my bow while relocating to that area. So I had to pull out, go to Lancaster Archery Supply and pick up some a new sight, and basically scout parts off the new sight to fix my old sight because I didn't want to have to re-sight in all my pins. And then, so I went to this new area. I was just getting set up, and 2 older gentlemen came through that were lost. So I had to talk with those guys a little bit, and while they were lost, I actually wandered through one of the main bedding areas. I was suspected bedding areas. So I had a little optimism last night for the sit, but actually I saw 4 doe. 2 of those doe were alone, and one of those doe had pretty black hocks. So I assumed she was at or near going into heat. So I decided today to go back into this new spot. Like I said, yesterday was the first time I really laid eyes on it. I map scouted it, but never really checked it out till yesterday. I went in there this morning, got in good and clean. I shifted trees about 10 yards closer to where the deer were moving yesterday, only because I was about 35-40 yards from the deer yesterday. You know, I like to get a little more of that high percentage shot if I can. And it was a good looking tree right there. So I moved into that area and set up. I actually had a slow morning. I didn't see anything initially. And then up in some private ground above the property, I saw a buck chasing a doe. It might have been him, I'm not sure. I just caught a glimpse of 2 deer running. So one of them had some antlers, but I couldn't tell how big and how much. I saw them for maybe 3 or 4 seconds. It was pretty quick. After they disappeared, I quick checked my weather app and on X to make sure that the forecasted wind was going to be okay for the evening sit to stay put for the day. When I looked up and saw this guy coming fast, and he came in pretty much on a string. Now I done calling maybe 45 minutes before that, but I think I was just in the right place because he came into about 10 yards. I did look at the footage, and true to form, the deer steps right out of frame. I even zoomed in this time, which was probably my mistake. I would have kept it panned out. I would have probably got the shot, but he came into about 10 yards, and I drilled him, and the rest is history. As soon as I seen him coming in, I saw this side here, and I could see these long brows. I mean, his brows are probably 5 inches long, and check them out. And at that point, I decided to shoot her. When he stepped out from the thicker stuff, I saw he was missing this part of the main beam, and I kind of took a second, and then I said, heck with it. It's a good-sized buck. Looks like a mature deer, and I decided he was the deer for me this year in Pennsylvania. I'm sure this video is going to have in it I hope this video has in it the buck I kind of nicked last week. That was a much bigger deer than this. That probably would have been my biggest, if not my second biggest buck, and I'm still kind of a little bit bummed about it. But I clipped that deer high right across the top of the back. I bleeded him to a stop, and I should have held a little low. It was 35 yards, and I didn't. It was my fault. And that deer dumped on the shot, and I just clipped the top maybe half inch of his back, and I actually saw that deer again a couple days later, and he was trying to run off a 6-point. Well, he ran off a 6-point, so he seems reasonably healthy still. And as sad as I am to wrap my tag around that buck this year, I did kind of get a pretty good idea what that deer does, and if he was a giant or a pretty good buck this year, let's hope he makes it through the season and gives me an opportunity next year, because that'd be awesome. Alright, well, hope you guys enjoy this footage from Pennsylvania. This is my home state, And there's always a special place in my heart for Pennsylvania. I have a hard time going to places like Ohio and Maryland, other places, till I have some success in Pennsylvania, and it feels good to do it today, especially when a deer I can be proud of, like a nice older deer and a beautiful buck. This deer is going to feed a lot of people and provides memories for years to come. That's what it's all about. See you guys in the woods.